The reason people think I'm funny, in order to be funny, you need to be saying something that's kind of true. So when I say, for example, I don't feel comfortable living around black people, it's too dangerous. Many people find that funny, but they find it funny because it's uncomfortably true. And it resonates with people because whether we like it or not, that is how people have felt since the summer of love. And me and Hunter Biden touched on this. Is the reason that people resonate with me because of a lack of job opportunity? Or is it because they posted the black square in commemoration of George Floyd, and maybe they went to a protest and they knelt and the rest of it, and then they saw the end result of defund and abolish the police? It was looting. It was burning the cities down. It was a crime wave that went on for years of increased murder and carjacking and property crimes. And people said, hey, what the fuck? We were told this narrative that black people were being gunned down because they were walking while black. Well, we implemented the body cams and we defunded the police. We did everything you said that needed to be done, and all we got was a crime spree. We had 20,000 car thefts in Chicago in 2022. And you had 50 buildings destroyed in Minneapolis. So that doesn't really square with what we were told. Maybe that's why it's resonating. And the same goes with Israel. How many years have we been beaten over the head with this over-the-top rhetoric about the Holocaust and anti-Semitism and our closest ally, Israel, our closest, most special friendship with Israel? And October 7th and the 1,200 that were killed and the babies in ovens and so on. And then we watched every single night throughout 2023 and 2024, Israel massacre women and children and civilians indiscriminately, destroying buildings. And people once again said, hey, what the fuck? You want to lecture us about genocide? Why don't we talk about the genocide you're committing? You want to talk about anti-Semitism? Let's talk about some of the rhetoric that comes from the most radical Orthodox Jewish rabbis in Israel. Let's talk about the rhetoric of the National Security and Finance Minister of the State of Israel. You want to talk about bigotry? The ADL wants to talk about hatred? Let's talk about Bezalel Smotrich and Ben Gvir. And let's apply the same lens. So the reason that my message is resonating is not because it is some kind of stand-in. It is not some general expression of anger about the economy. I am saying specific things. I am saying specific things about feminism, about crime, about immigration, about the influence of foreign countries. It is resonating because it is true. It is resonating because people agree. People find it funny because there is truth to all of it. And so it's interesting that people want to sit down and they want to perform this gesture of listening, but they don't really want to hear. They want to perform the gesture. I'm doing my part, I'm listening, but they want to hear what they want to hear, which is it's all about the economy, and people just need to shut up and tolerate the Me Too excesses, tolerate these people like Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago, tolerate the double standards with race, tolerate the endless diversity waves of immigration, tolerate how much they're insulting our intelligence with this Jewish propaganda. And they think they can sate us with UBI. That's what they want. What they want a version of Nick Fuentes that says, you know what, you're right. I wasn't really mad about immigration. I wasn't really mad about hypergamy. I wasn't really mad about our Jewish oligarchy or the black crime wave. What I was really mad about all along is the lack of opportunity in the job market. And now I'm a Democrat. The Democrats are going to give us Medicare for all. The Democrats are going to rent control the apartments. The Democrats are going to give us UBI. And me and Ilhan Omar and AOC are going to hold hands and sing Kumbaya. Well, that's just not going to happen because that's not my fucking problem. And that's not your problem. That's not anybody's problem with this country. I think, by the way, people would tolerate living with a lot less materially if it meant that qualitatively other things improved.
And just quickly, UBI for thick people like myself. universal basic income. You have the likes of Elon Musk, Sam Altman, the founder or CEO of ChatGPT, pushing for universal basic income. Basically, here in Newcastle, people are basically on that because not many people work. And right in the video before this, I mentioned I do agree with Tucker, but what Nick laid out there, you can't argue with. Like, it's facts. It is facts. Like,
I am sure that people would rather live in a smaller house and eat out at restaurants less and make less money if it meant they were safe on the subway, if it meant that they lived in a neighborhood that was homogeneous, if it meant that they could meet a girl in high school or in college and get married young without divorce and hypergamy and abortion and feminism. I'm sure people actually would tolerate less economically if it meant that the culture of our society would improve. And that tells you what the heart of the matter really is.
and just while we're on there, our culture is being lost, but I think personally it's because we've lost our faith in our community. There's no more community up here. People don't know their neighbours. Everyone's self-centered, out for themselves. And I think that's why a lot of the white, I say Christians, but none of them go to church. I were all christened like, but no one goes to church like, my age and younger. Very, very few, I'll say that. And I think obviously that is why a lot of people don't like the Muslims, because they stick together. They have community. I've been to the mosque a few times, and they're very nice people like. And I think in a way, people are afraid of that. And the powers that be don't want cohesion. They don't want communities. They don't want people working together. They want everyone divided on their own little mission, spending money.
It's not the economy, stupid. It's that our society is disintegrating. Families are disintegrating. Communities are disintegrating. Our nation is disintegrating. And the way that you put that back together is not by redistributing the wealth. It's not by redistributing the money with UBI. The way that you put the country back together is to bring standards back to where they were. Clean up the cities. No more graffiti. No more pot smoking. No more carjacking. No more illegal immigration. No more illegal immigrants taking the jobs. No more H-1B, F-1 visas. No more Indians and Chinese taking all the jobs from deserving American students. No more feminism. No more broken families. No more breaking the hearts of children watching their parents split up.
But how do you change that? It's up to us as a people to change that. You can't look at your government to change that. Yes, I understand we don't want all this unvetted, open border immigration. That is my stance on that. But how do you become a community again? And I think, like you say, this is just me. I think it all circles back to faith. Honestly, I do.
That's the answer. So it's interesting because they all acknowledge that the reason I'm popular is because they're not paying attention to the young people, but they're still not paying attention to the young people. They don't really want to listen to what we're saying. They only want to hear what they want to hear. And what they want to hear is that the way we're going to solve this is with some kind of new UBI program, some kind of new social welfare program. And that's just not going to do. That just simply will not do. So I like the conversation, but there was a moment when he was telling me how inappropriate it is to make jokes about the Holocaust. It's so inappropriate and hurtful to the lived experience of people to say these crass things. And I understand where he's coming from. I get where that might be offensive. I know where that's provocative. But I told him, I said, there's bigger issues here. And you're still not listening. We're living in this country that's in free fall. We're living in the ruins of a once great civilization. We're trying to make light of it with the gallows humor, and we're being lectured about this rather than actually being listened to about how we want society to improve. So I do agree with him that now that I have a larger platform, I do have more of a responsibility. I agree with that in a sense, to choose my words carefully and to look at the bigger picture, maybe be a little less self-indulgent. But I think that what the Tucker Carlsons and the Jeremy Borings and even the Hunter Bidens, I think what they maybe failed to consider is that my message is resonating because I'm right. My message is resonating because people agree with me. It's because I'm saying uncomfortable truths that only because we now live in a culture of free speech, people are allowed to think about, talk about, listen to, laugh at, and hear. And maybe they don't like that, but that is the real reason why I'm popular. So it's a little patronizing is the word that I would use. And I don't necessarily throw that at Biden in particular, but I think that from the older generations, there's in general this kind of patronizing spirit that says, all right, sonny boy, we're listening. Tell us what we want to hear, which is that you're really just mad that you can't get a stinking job. You're mad because home ownership is too unaffordable. And I think that those are accelerants rather than the true cause. I try to tell them the real issue that people like myself has as a young white man is we don't feel like we have a home. And he brought up the Civil Rights Act. They brought up Return of the Land, which is this project to create an all-white community in Arkansas. And I said, I agree in principle with the project. I said, because you look at how America is diversifying and there's all these ethnic enclaves that are coming into the country. And so you can go to a little Haiti and you can go to a little Somalia and you can go to a little Mexico. I said, but as a young white man, there's nowhere we can go that resembles the country our parents grew up in. Where can we go where there's a white neighborhood where we can have our culture, where it doesn't smell like Vindaloo, Indian food? With somewhere we can go where it isn't everything's in Spanish or everything's in Arabic. Somewhere we could go where it isn't violent and it doesn't look like a bank at a Popeyes, where they're playing baseball and eating hot dogs, and people are outside gleefully mowing their lawns, and people are jumping rope and walking their dogs. And he said, well, racism and redlining and Jim Crow and Chicago in the 60s was so segregated. And I said, man, it's the 2020s. These are the problems that my generation's facing. We feel like we don't have a home. So forget about the job market. And I know that is a major source of acrimony. I know that's a major problem. But I would say that we suffer from a spiritual sickness, which is alienation. Alienated from our neighbors, alienated from our parents, the men from the women, alienated from ourselves, from our roots, who we are as people. Every other group seems to have a story celebrating their glorious past. As Muslims, as Jews, as blacks, as Asians. Alienated from our own culture, our own identity, the things we take pride in, our heroes, our history. Increasingly surrounded by people that don't look like us, act like us, don't like us, being taught a narrative in history that we were the villains, that we caused all the problems, that we can't take pride in who we are. It's a spiritual problem of alienation, and that has little to do with the economic state of the country. So we will keep pushing this message until they are ready to hear it. I'm not ready to. Maybe I'll be careful with what I say. We want to open our arms and embrace people to propel this message. We want power to change society the way we want it to change. But we are not going to give up the message until we're being heard. I'm not ready to put it all away and say, all right, everybody, let's now just be Democrats. You know what? After all this time, now that I'm grown up, now that I've matured, now that I'm no longer a stupid kid, now I realized all along it was really just about the economy. And I was just taking it out on women and transgenders and illegal immigrants and black people and Jews. We do have a Jewish oligarchy. We do have a black crime epidemic. We do have a double standard with race. We have far too many illegal immigrants. As a matter of fact, we have far too many foreigners here. Feminism is out of control. That's why our fertility rate is collapsing. That's why family formation isn't happening. These are all real problems, and they're going to be addressed. And I will continue to be popular as long as I'm the only one that's talking about this. And I would like to see, as time goes on, you'll notice how other people begin to diverge with this message promoting their own agenda. People like Tucker Carlson will, mark my words, he will more clearly diverge from this because he will be pushing this materialist Marxian interpretation saying it's all about economics, and so will Vance. And people on the left, it's the same thing. People on the left are increasingly going to alienate themselves from us because whereas they're very strong on the Israel issue, they're also promoting queer liberation, and they're also promoting abolishing ICE and abolishing prisons. They're also promoting all this garbage. So we have to be the champions for the true message, which is nationalism. Nationalism is the message. I am an American nationalist. And you can't have a nation without families. You can't have a nation without borders. You can't have a nation without law and order. You can't have a nation without sovereignty. That's America first. That's nationalism. I am not a leftist. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Marxist. I'm not a materialist. I'm not a Muslim. I'm a nationalist. So these are our problems. This is what's resonating. This is the answer. So anyway, that's that. But we're going to move on. We're going to get into the news.
You can't argue with them, like, you can't. What do you think?